Today in part 2 of my series on grains, I'm going to be talking about the short-term storage of smaller amounts of grains. Welcome to Urban Prepping with Pam. I'm Pam. Our long-term storage of grains really isn't a wide variety. I keep hard white wheat and soft white wheat. That's pretty much all I'm going to use as far as the wheat for baking goes, and we buy enough to put in 5-gallon buckets. Now we have some other grains that we keep in a 5-gallon bucket, which would be oat groats, because we eat those every morning for breakfast. And dry corn or cornmeal, that would also be something that we would have in long-term storage. But, you know, if you're making breads and you want to experiment with other grains and you don't want to just stick with wheat, which is like me because I'm adventurous, so I purchased 5-pound bags of a variety of different grains. And in my first video, you saw me taking those grains out of the box, and I explained what they were, and there were a wide variety. I have actually put most of those grains in jars for short-term storage, and I'm going to show you how I do it, because you still have the issue of bugs. And even if it's shorter term, these little bugs and mealyworms and whatever it is that gets inside of grains can still hatch. And so you need to do something in order to prevent that from happening. So some people, they like to talk about putting their grain in the freezer for a few days and then bringing it out, letting it thaw, and then packing it away. But actually, that's not really the complete process, because if you're going to do that, what you have done is you've simulated a winter. And so the eggs in there aren't going to die from the freezing. What's going to happen is the freezing is going to simulate a winter season, and then when you bring the grain out to thaw, then those eggs will hatch. So you actually, if you're going to do the freezing method, you have to do it twice. You put your grains in the freezer for a few days, up to a week, and then bring it out and let it thaw out completely. And, then you got to put it back in and do it all over again in order to kill those eggs that would have hatched now on the thaw. So I don't really have room in my freezer to do that. And we buy in bulk. And so, when you're buying several 100 pounds of grain, even a 25-pound bag of grain, I don't have room in my freezer for a 25-pound bag. So that's not going to do it for me. And actually, there's another way that you can store your grains without having to freeze it. And I have been doing this for a long time, actually for years. And I've never had, I'm not going to say never, once in my early years when I was first married and I was in my 20s, I did have some bugs that appeared in some flour that I had. And at that time, it freaked me out. And so for the longest time, I have been storing my flour in airtight containers and vacuum sealing and things like that. I have never had a bug problem since then. And so what you want to do is you want to deny the bugs air. And you can do that easily through vacuum sealing. These are the grains that I bought. In video 1, you saw me unpacking them from the box. Now these grains now here, they're all stored and they're ready to go. I left them on the table because I wanted you to see them packaged. And so what I did was I poured them. Now those were all 5-pound bags. So I have half-gallon size jars and then quart size jars. So a 5-pound bag will fill both of those jars. So I have 2 jars of each kind of grain here. I'm going to show you how to package these grains so that they stay fresh, number one, but most especially so that they don't get bugs. And like I was saying, you want to deny oxygen. That way the eggs won't hatch. And there's going to be eggs. I would imagine there's eggs in all grain. So I have this bag of bay leaves. Bay leaves also help keep the bugs away. They don't like them. So when I package my grains, I put a couple of bay leaves in the bottom of the jar. I'm going to try to do this without a funnel. And I pour my grain in. Okay, so if you're thinking of ordering a 33-ounce bag of grain, it's most likely going to fit. It's not going to fit in a quart-sized jar. This is a half-gallon size jar, and it's up more than halfway. It says it's about 5 cups, and a quart size fits 4 cups. So I'll put a couple bay leaves in the top right here, and that just helps keep the bugs away. But that's not the most important way to do it. Now, if you don't have any way to vacuum seal, you can try, before I had vacuum sealers, that's how I did it. I put the bay leaves in there, and it does not impart any kind of a flavor to your grain. But it does, I believe it helps because I've been doing it for so many years. But if you can vacuum seal, okay, you put the lid on, and then these are, and I've shown these in other videos before, but these are made by Food Saver, and they're attachments that go with their Food Saver machine. Now, I do have a Food Saver machine, and these connect to the Food Saver machine with a hose, and I have the hose. But I like the freedom of being able to just move around and not be connected to a machine. So I also have this little tiny Food Saver. It's a vacuum sealer. And what you do is you can use this on those special Food Saver bags that have the little round thing, and that will suck the air out of the bags. But to do a jar, you take that little bottom piece off and you put this in here. Okay, that is sealed. So see, I can lift this heavy jar by the lid here and it doesn't unseal. Now when I vacuum seal, I always put the ring on. I do believe that helps keep it sealed. But remember, when you're canning food, you never store your canned food with the ring on. So this is one way that you can store your grains, and I consider this a short-term storage. The reason I don't consider this a long-term storage, but if you had nothing else, I suppose you could do it, is because light can get through the glass, and for long-term storage, you really don't want any light. Now, if you have a closet, or if you have a room that gets completely dark, or a pantry where you're not opening the doors, I suppose you could consider this long-term storage, or maybe even make a sleeve to go over the jar to keep the light out. That might help. They do make tinted jars. I'm not sure if they're making any right now. Ball Canning came out with tinted jars, but they cost more. And I liked it when they did it because it helps keep the light out. You want to keep the light out of anything that you store, whether it be your canned goods or your dried goods like this that are vacuum sealed. So this is one way to do it. Now, if you have a quantity of grain that you want to put away for long-term storage, you could use a Mylar bag. Now this is a quart-size Mylar bag, so this grain would not fit in here. I also have gallon-size Mylar bags. What I like about these quart ones, and I think from now on when I get other Mylar bags, I'm going to get the ones with the zip closure here. They're just easier to work with, and then you seal it above the zip with heat. So I use a hair straightener to do mine. So if you wanted to store for longer term, the best way to do it would be to put your grain in a Mylar bag and then use an oxygen absorber. So I just go ahead and I put my food in the bags and just use an oxygen absorber and seal it. So let's talk about oxygen absorbers. Here I have 300 cc's oxygen absorbers, and I store my extra ones. They come in a bag where that is vacuum sealed already, and so when you open it up, you immediately have to do something with them because they start activating immediately. So when I open the bag, I put my oxygen absorbers in my Mylar bags, and then the ones that were left over I put in a canning jar, and I actually used my vacuum sealer here and took the air out of it. If I had not used the vacuum sealer, these oxygen absorbers would have vacuum sealed this jar eventually. But I'm trying to save these oxygen absorbers. I don't want them to activate to seal the jar. If I can do anything to save them, I will do it. And so I went ahead and vacuum sealed the jar myself. And then every time I need one, I just open the jar, take what I need, and then close it back up and seal it once again. So if you are using a quart-sized Mylar bag, which is what this is, you're going to want to use a 100 cc oxygen absorber. And you can use them with grains. The oxygen absorber is not, you just throw it in there. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to destroy your food. If you're using a gallon size Mylar bag, you're going to want to use a 300 cc oxygen absorber. And then I'm going to make another video tonight when my husband and we've still got some of these 25-pound bag of grains that we have to put away for long-term storage. And that will be part 3, where I'm showing you how to put away large quantities of grains for long-term storage. And of course, then you want for a 5-gallon bucket, you're going to want a 2,000 cc oxygen absorber. But today we're just talking about these smaller amounts and the best way to keep them. So one of the reasons why I got this wide variety of grains is this book here, and I highly recommend it. This Homegrown Flour book by Sue Becker. So we're having a light issue because I've got a window behind me. Okay, here it is. The Homegrown Flour book by Sue Becker. I can't do enough to recommend this book. It has been a real eye-opener for me, and I learned things about flour that I mean, I highly recommend that you grind your own flour. I don't know what else to say about that. I think I'm going to go ahead and have that be that'll be another part of the series, because there's so much to say about grinding your own flour. There's no way I can contain it in a short video along with something else. It's going to have to be its own video. So this is part 2. Part 3 is going to be, we're going to be showing you how to store large quantities or bulk quantities of grain for long-term storage. That will be a video of its own. And then I think the one after that, I'm going to talk about the use of these grains and grinding your own flour. But one thing that I do want to say about this book, and that's one of the reasons why I purchased some of these grains. Some of them I just wanted because I wanted them. But there is a recipe in here, and I might have talked about this in another video. Years ago, I used to buy something that was called Ezekiel Flour, and now we're going back probably 30 years. I've been baking bread all my adult life. And they used to have something called Ezekiel Flour, which I absolutely loved, and I made Ezekiel bread with it all the time. And then the kids got a little bit older, and I started working, and that's really one thing. You know, I bake now and then, but I've been working now for 20 years, and a lot of that stuff's been put on the back burner. And so maybe about 5 years ago, I started looking for Ezekiel flour again because I wanted to start making some more Ezekiel bread. And I've seen in the health food section of my grocery store, they sell the Ezekiel bread in the freezer section. So you can buy the bread, but I wanted to make my own bread. And I could not find the flour anywhere. I went online, I looked everywhere. To my knowledge, they no longer make Ezekiel flour. And that was a real bummer. Now, when I ordered this book, the Sue Becker book, I really ordered it because I had heard something about grinding your own flour and the health benefits of it. And it was on another video that I was watching, and they recommended you read the first half of the book. Really is all about grinding flours and different kinds of flours and the history of it and the health benefits and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, there's recipes in the second half of the book. I'm just going to buy it for the recipes. I don't care about that first part. Well, I started reading the first part of this book, and I was really blown away. It really changed my life, and it's changed my husband's life too, because we are just going in a totally new direction as far as I am never buying white flour again. In fact, today I gave a 5-gallon bucket of white flour, unbleached, but white flour to my daughter. She's got a bread machine. And I have another daughter, and I'm going to give her the other 5-gallon bucket of flour because I am grinding my own from now on. That's why we bought so much grain. But anyway, when I opened this book, there's a recipe in here to make your own Ezekiel flour. I couldn't believe it. I got so excited because most of the you can get it online. You can get the recipe for the Ezekiel flour online. But most of them are talking about sprouted berries and, grain berries and stuff. And not having known anything really about all of that, I was like, I don't want to get into that. I just want to grind my own grains. I don't want to have to sprout them and all that. Well, actually, sprouting is not all that difficult. And so I'm going to be doing that too. But this recipe does not actually call for sprouting your berries. But what this is it's a variety of different kinds of grains. So the grains in this recipe are millet, barley, spelt, and red wheat. And so that's why the red wheat, I didn't buy a 25-pound bag of that, but I did buy a 5-pound bag of that. And that's really to make Ezekiel flour. But in addition to that, it calls for lentils, northern beans, kidney beans, and pinto beans. And if you're looking for the actual recipe, I really recommend you buy the book, if for nothing else, for this recipe. And then she's got, next to this, she shows you how to make the flour. And then next to this page here, she actually shows you how to bake that into bread using the full amount. So what she gives you here for the flour, you use that entire amount to make the bread. So there's nothing left over. You're not wasting anything. And so really, I just got so excited when I saw this, and that means so much to me. But there is so much more in here. And I've already used her basic flour recipe. It's amazing. And I followed it to the T. And it's called the Basic Yeast Bread. And it's like I've never had bread like this before. So this is very exciting. So anyway, that's why I bought some of these extra grains here, was just so that I could make that Ezekiel flour. I guess the biggest thing to take away is if you're going to be buying grains that are in a bag like this, you've got to get them out of the bag. It doesn't matter how small that bag is. It really doesn't. Whether you buy it in the supermarket, and I don't suggest you buy grains in a supermarket only because they're radiating everything now. So it's going through radiation to, who knows, kill whatever is not supposed to be in there, and I don't want that. I'm buying organic grains, and I've said in my first video, from Azure standard, and it couldn't be easier. I'll leave a link below if you're interested in checking them out. But they even have small bags like this, and they're all organic. But the big point is you've got to get everything, when it comes to grains, you've got to get it out of the bag. Even if you're buying flour, it's really not recommended that you keep it in the bag. You've got to get it out. Everything's got to get out of that bag if you don't want bugs. So that's all I can tell you. If you're buying flours at the grocery store and you're not having a bug problem, it might be because they've passed that flour through a radiation machine and irradiated it. That's not a good thing either, at least not for me. So, like I said, get them out, get them in jars, vacuum seal them, or put them in a Mylar bag. And if you do that, if you put them in a Mylar bag, make sure you use an oxygen absorber. And again, just to recap, if you're using a quart-sized bag, 100 cc oxygen absorber. If you're using a gallon-sized bag, you want to use a 300 cc oxygen absorber. And if you're doing a large bulk size, 5-gallon buckets, you want to use a 2000 cc oxygen absorber. So look for my next video. That will be part 3, where I'm showing how we store our bulk 25-pound bag size grains. And then part 4, I'm going to start going over some of the benefits of grinding your own flour. There may be other parts after that. I don't know. We'll see how much I have to say about the subject. It's a lot more than I expected. I thought I'd have a 15-minute video, but boy, when I started, you know, there's just so much to say, and I'm trying to, I'm actually just really putting this out there, hoping that if you're new to this and you don't know what you're doing, I want to make sure that I say everything that you need to know so you're not left wondering. That's all. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, do me a favor and subscribe to my channel, and that way you'll be aware when I put more videos up. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.